Hello, everyone, and welcome to a Panther Pourri Express, a Florida Hockey Now video podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Langsam. Here with me, as always, are my co-hosts, Alex Lopez and TJ Peterson. And joining us, the best in the biz at covering what we are about to discuss, Mr. George Richards. George, how are you today?
I'm terrific. How you doing? What's going on?
We're doing great right now. The Florida Panthers have made a bit of a splash of a trade here, acquiring Vladimir Tarasenko from the Ottawa Senators in exchange for the 2025 third and the 2024 fourth conditional. The condition being if the Florida Panthers win the 2024 Stanley Cup, it becomes the 2026 third. So great job, Bill Zito, acquiring Tarasenko in exchange for two future third-round picks.
Well, there you go, right? I mean, you win the Stanley Cup, you can have the third round pick. That's absolutely fine. It could be 2 second-round picks or what I mean,
Yeah.
you've got away with getting a guy like Tarasenko without losing any roster players. They're retaining 50% of his cap hit, which allows the Panthers to continue doing something at this trade deadline if they so wish. And we'll talk about that, I'm sure, later. Just a terrific day for the Panthers. Tarasenko wanted to be here in Florida, which is why Ottawa didn't get what it really wanted. And there were apparently 6-7 other teams that were in on Tarasenko, but he wouldn't waive his no trade. Ottawa took what they could get. Kind of reminds us of the Philadelphia deal a couple years ago with Claude Giroux, and the Panthers paid a fair price for Giroux. But that was all Philly. You might have been able to jostle Philly a little bit, but that's neither here nor there. Panthers get a really good player at a cheap price.
Yeah, and even better, it puts the Ottawa Senators fans in the unenviable position that they have to root for the Florida Panthers this season. It's wonderful.
Do they really?
If they want the pick to be better.
If they want that third round pick.
Yeah, they really care. What's the difference between a third and a fourth?
I would honestly bet that most Sens fans pray way harder on the Panthers' downfall than they would like a third round pick instead of a fourth.
That was so that they wouldn't get ripped in the Ottawa Sun the next day. They were like, yeah, but it could be a third. It could be a third. It's not just a third to fourth. It could be 2/3. So that's all that is.
Yeah, it's wishful thinking to sell what is a pretty one-sided trade. I mean, even if it doesn't work for the Panthers, it costs them almost nothing.
It's two darts.
Yeah. So the one downside that you could make if you wanted to make an argument about Tarasenko not being too effective of a player, which we'll get into shortly.
Yeah.
The one thing that you would probably say is that they may end the trade deadline thinking, well, we got Tarasenko. Job here is done. Meanwhile, he steps into the lineup and he's 32 years old, but he does have 17 goals this year in 57 games played, total of 41 points on a team that isn't really doing that well this year. They're scoring okay, I think, though. The problem is the other end of the ice. He's not helping them on the other end of the ice, but that's not really what the Panthers need help in. They're second in the league in goals against. They're second in the league in expected goals against per 60 at all situations. They're tied for third in 5-on-5 expected goals against per 60 minutes. And I've said it many a time to all of three of you, I suppose, on the podcast, off the podcast, whenever this team loses games, it's because they can't get to 2 or more goals. How many times have they lost a game this year because they only scored 1 goal or didn't score at all? They haven't lost many games this year. And those are the kinds of games that they lose, where they get 35 shots on Urson, the Philadelphia goalie, and they only score 1 goal, and they somehow lose 2-1 in 2024, the year of our Lord. This is a player that is going to help you not lose those games so often. And we talked about in January, the bottom 6, only 1 guy scored on a goalie at Toulouse-Touraine. It was a really pathetic month for bottom 6 scoring. And whether this means that Tarasenko is going to be in the bottom 6, or you have a little bit more flexibility to put a good forward into the bottom 6, like Evan Rodriguez, who's currently there, or maybe they move Reinhart back there, et cetera, et cetera. You have options to make the forward core stronger as a whole.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Florida was looking for a top 9 guy. Tarasenko could play on your top, he could play in your top line. You could put him with Barkov. He's going to play on the right side, but you could put him with Barkov and move Reinhart to the left side of that top line. You could put him in place of Tkachuk with Bennett. same thing. He's going to start on the third line right now, but that's going to change. That's going to change. They're going to move him up and down the lineup. He gives you that it factor, right? He's a danger to score every time he's on the ice because he's got that tremendous shot. He's a sniper. He's going to score. He can play defense. He's not going to kill penalties or anything, but he's going to be on either one of the two power plays, probably start off in place of Evan Rodriguez in power play 2. But whatever, that's the stuff that can be worked out. The Panthers are in a position right now, just like they were 2 years ago when Claude Giroux came here, that they've got 20-something games in first place or second, whatever it is, to work through these little things. And listen, Tarasenko's a veteran guy. He's going to be fine. Like you said, he's 32 years old. He should fit right in. And, the Panthers, obviously, everybody's saying, don't rock the boat. You've got to make additions if you can. Bill Zito all the time is saying, if we can upgrade a position, we're going to upgrade the position. You saw it in the offseason. They got rid of some guys that the Panthers really liked because they thought the guys that replaced them were upgrades. They loved Alex Lyon. Everybody loved Alex Lyon. They thought Anthony Stolarz was an upgrade. Looks like he might be or is. All right. Kevin Stenlund, they thought he was an upgrade over Stahl. They've made these little tweaks here and there to make the team better. This makes the Panthers better.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also insurance on if there is an injury in the playoffs in your top 6, like you've got a guy with, playoff pedigree, top 6 pedigree. Yes. Is Vladimir Tarasenko the Vladimir Tarasenko of 5 years ago? No, he's not. But, if Kachuk breaks his sternum again or Verhaeghe goes down, like you have someone that you can slot in at the right wing because he is a right wing exclusive, even though he is a left-handed shot.
Yeah.
But you have someone that you can slot in, and it's not,
Grigory Denisenko.
Right. It's not Grigory Denisenko. You're not asking Eetu Luostarinen to move up to the top 6 and keep up the production. Real quick, George, I know because you mentioned on power play, he's going to start off on power play 2. Where would he
I don't know that. I don't know that, but that I would assume. I mean, are you going to miss the power play 1 right now?
Right. I wouldn't.
No.
I wouldn't, though. I will throw this out there. If you are going to put him on power play 1, it's to replace Brandon Montour, and Barkov is your point man again.
Yeah, but they really like Montour in that spot. I mean, he chases down pucks. I mean, he does so much stuff.
Yeah,
I wouldn't touch the power play, but again, Paul Maurice said it the other day. That's not really his department. He's going, we'll see what happens tomorrow at the morning skate. I'm sure they're going to be working on special teams tomorrow. Vladimir, this obviously was taped on Wednesday, but Vladimir Tarasenko will be at morning skate on Thursday. He's talking to the media at 11. He's in the lineup Thursday night against the Flyers. I would bet, even though the Panthers don't normally do this on morning skate days, I would bet that they work on special teams Thursday.
Yeah, that would make sense. George, are they done?
No, I don't think they are. I mean, if they are, it's because that's what the market would bear. The Panthers are active and looking for solutions. They got just over $3 million thanks to Ottawa.
Retaining 50%.
Retaining 50%. That gives Florida some movement here, either to bring up. I don't know about bring up, but they're not going to bring anybody up from Charlotte right now. They're going to let Charlotte play out its season and then see what happens. But no, they're going to be looking for guys. I mean, look at 2022 when they had a little bit of cap space. They brought in guys like Robert Hagg. Okay, not a big deal, but they did that. They retained money for other teams, got draft picks. I don't think it's going to be anything major. Maybe Noah Hannafin. I don't know. Nothing major. Yeah, I mean, you've only got $3 million and change, and you don't have a lot of draft picks, so it won't be anything major. But depth wise, I could see him making a move.
Well, literally, as we're recording this, Noah Hannafin is going to the Vegas Golden Knights, and we'll talk about that in a minute or two.
Yeah, George. Speaking of Hannafin, yes, they're not done. You say if the market allows that they are not done. Do you know where they might be or are they shifting their focus to the blue line now that they've got the forward to kind of create a little bit more depth? Are they looking for another forward instead, maybe? Do you know where the focus, where Bill Zito and his team's focus is post Tarasenko trade?
My belief is it's defensive.
Okay.
The word I was getting is that the Panthers were in the market for a top 9 forward and a depth defenseman. They're very happy with the 6 they've got right now. And all the talk about Hannafin, I mean, I wrote about it at Florida Hockey Now. It never seemed, how are they going to pull that off? I mean, they just didn't have the draft capital to do it and all that stuff. And he didn't have the no trade to say Florida or no one, because he probably, word was, he would have gone to Tampa.
Yeah.
If that was the case. So it never felt right, Hannafin. So I was always going to be a decent top 9 forward, Tarasenko. And now you look for a depth guy. But again, they love their 6 defensemen. They don't want to move. Who's number 6? It's Kulikov.
Right.
Yeah.
They love him. He's a terrific
having a good year. Yeah.
You saw his pass the other night. He gets up in the rush. He doesn't get beat. He doesn't take dumb penalties like he did earlier in the year. But what if one of those guys gets hurt? And that's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You want to be able to have a veteran guy in there. You don't want to rely, and I'm not saying anything derogatory, but you know how Paul Maurice loves his veteran players. He's not going to have Lucas Carlson playing in Game 6 against Toronto. He wants
Belinskis.
Belinskis is going to be on this team at the end of the Charlotte season, but
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's at least a veteran guy. Paul likes that. I mean, Paul's like, oh, he's seen a lot of hockey. He's good. But yeah, I think they'll go for another defenseman.
I do want to point out that right now on the NHL roster, and even if you include Uvis Belinskis in here, we're talking about 5 lefties, 6 if you include Belinskis, and 2 righties. So if you lose one of those righties, it did work out when the season started, where they basically didn't have any righties.
Right.
But Paul Maurice does like having guys play on their strong side.
Right,
So,
which one guy I threw out there, Andrew Peak from Columbus, is a guy that we all know and love, Parkland guy, and Bill Zito knows him better than any of us because he was one of the guys who drafted him in Columbus. Peak is being shopped by Columbus. He gives you no offense. He scored a goal last night, first in a year.
Yeah.
What's he going to cost? He's a shutdown big guy.
Yeah, that's an interesting name.
He
I like
comes
that.
home to play for a competitor. He's not going to, cry and moan that he's not playing. That was one of my, just off the top of my head, that was affordable, right-handed shot and a big guy. So,
yeah, the only issue there is term. He's got 2 more years at 2.75, and I don't know if he's.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
I didn't realize that either. Okay, I didn't even look at his numbers. I didn't think it was. Yeah, that's a different deal then. Yeah, that's a lot of money. When you're he's 2.75 per season.
Yeah, 2.75, and I just don't think he's worth that.
he's not.
No, that seems. I thought he was like an 800K. Like
I did too. I didn't even bother looking. I
might have been the last year.
I thought,
There's a reason Kekalinen no longer has a job. Moving on to around the NHL, because there was a lot of trades today outside the Panthers. Probably the biggest one of the day was Bowen Byram to Buffalo in exchange for Casey Middlestat. That gives Buffalo 2 number one overall defensemen and a number 4 overall defenseman. I don't know if any other team has ever put a blue line like that together in the modern era. 20 seconds or less, everybody. What are your thoughts on that move?
This is nitpicky, but I think you said it in the wrong order. I think the trade was Colorado gets Casey Middlestat and they give up Bo Byram to do it. That was the most interesting move of the day, in my opinion. Just a really interesting 1-for-1 of 2, kind of early career, but not young, not super young guys.
I mean,
really interesting trade.
There's one thing on this trade that I'm really interested to see how it plays out. There's
how many chin-ups
Casey
Middlestat can do at 10,000 feet?
It's not too unrelated to that. There's a lot of talk around the league, as there has been the past couple of years. Oh, you got to have size to win the Stanley Cup. Look at Vegas. All their guys are so big. I mean, Jonathan Marchessault did win the Conn Smythe, so that's one potential thorn in that argument. But Colorado is not going all in on size. They got the Philadelphia defenseman Sean Walker, and he's not necessarily a big hulking defenseman either. He's good defensively, but this is not a team that has bought into the idea that they need to go all in on size. Let's see how it works out.
I mean, it's an interesting move. I think Colorado's done a lot of nice things. Middlestat's a fine player. He's and maybe it's a change of scenery too for those guys. I
Yeah.
mean, it'll be good for both. That sounds like to me a win-win for both.
Yeah.
It works out for both ends.
And then I guess it's not done yet, but it looks like it's going to get done in the next few hours. Noah Hannafin is likely going to the Vegas Golden Knights. Mark Stone just happens to go on LTIR a week ago, questionable for the playoffs. They pick up Anthony Mantha for a song from Washington, and now they're getting Noah Hannafin. We don't know what the return is going to be. I would assume it's going to be a first-round pick plus, but Vegas is loading up again, and a Stanley Cup Finals rematch is absolutely a possibility.
Y'all think it's possible that everybody in the East is so scared of the Panthers that they're not willing to, pony up for the premium assets?
No, that's not how NHL GMs operate.
I was saying that tongue in cheek. You were supposed to react differently. Oh, we're so scary.
I mean, the Panthers are by far the best team in the East and maybe the NHL. They've just been so consistently good. This is not like the President's Trophy season of 2 years ago where every game, every other night was a 4-goal comeback. Like, no, they're just smothering and dominating. Last thing, because this Express has already gone on a little over. Even Roberto Luongo is calling out the Golden Knights for their obvious cap circumvention here. If Mark Stone plays in game 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs, they finally have to close the LTIR loophole, right? Because this is beyond ridiculous.
Why would they? They've had every opportunity to do so. General managers make this rule.
Yeah.
General managers have to deal with a salary cap. They don't want this loophole closed. It gets beat 32-0 every single time it comes up. They do not want this loophole closed. They want it there to help themselves. No, it's not changing. It could have changed. It could have changed in years past. It's not going to change. The GMs need it. It's an out for them. The Panthers could have used it last year because they had Hornquist on LTIR, which gave them some cap space, and they didn't. And it turns out Hornquist was hurt. There was no – we were all like, game 1 maybe for Hornquist, and maybe 2 or 3. but no, I mean, the Panthers stuck – Paul Maurice was like, this guy's never playing for us again.
Yeah.
As long as I'm coach, I mean, I don't know. Stone's got a ruptured spleen or something.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a serious internal thing.
If you're not trying, if you ain't cheating or whatever the line is, it is cap circumvention, but it's legal cap circumvention.
Right.
It's like Mark McGuire. What he was doing was legal. There was no rule against it, and baseball was fine with it. It was good for business. This is good for business.
Fair enough. All right. I guess that's it for this episode of Panther Pourri Express. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Vladimir Tarasenko is a Florida Panther, finally fixing the mistake Dale Talon made in the 2010 NHL draft. George is shaking his head, but trading down and taking Nick Bjugstad just did not work. But yeah.
Make sure to like and subscribe at the Infield Bar and Grill.
And also on YouTube.
Thanks, everybody, and go Panthers.